Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey Manager 9 playthrough of the Chicago Blackhawks. We are about to get our first season as general manager slash coach underway. Got 5 days until our first game of the year, but we are through the preseason and ready to go. Our roster is definitely not great. The Blackhawks were one of the weakest teams in the NHL last season. And when we think about our new team in this season, our only season objective is to not finish last, and we are a rebuilding team. So hopefully owner Rocky Wirtz will be pretty patient with us, give us a few years to start turning this thing around. We did sign Patrick Kane to an extension last episode, our first episode of the series, which was a bit of a surprise. I did not think we'd be able to do that. And in waivers, we just picked up Anthony Stolarz, who is probably going to be our starting goalie. We are not a great team. Also have Mrazek in front of the net, but I think that neither of them is the long-term answer. We also picked up Dennis Chalowski from the Islanders through waivers, and then Alex Formenton from the Senators through waivers. Big question over the rest of the season is clearly going to be, what do we do with Jonathan Toews? He's looking for a massive amount of money, over $14 million for a one-year extension. Seems to be a player on the decline. Won't be popular with the fans if we do decide to try to trade him as we get closer to the trade deadline, but that may be the right decision for our team. Otherwise, we don't have a lot of top-end talent. You can see why just avoiding last place is probably not that ambitious of a goal. I do think we should be able to achieve that goal, but we need to bring some talent onto this team. As I mentioned, we did hopefully help our goalie situation a little bit, bringing on Stolarz, but goalie is still a massive hole for this team when we look at the 5 goalies in our organization, and none of them have more than 2.5-star potential, and that's the player that we just picked up through waivers. So clearly we need to find some quality youth to help us in goal. Thought about perhaps trying to make a blockbuster trade to bring some talent onto the team, but quite honestly, I want to kind of get a better sense of what we have this season, who's worth potentially bringing on board for the longer term. Obviously, as I mentioned, we did sign Kane to an extension. We have, since our last episode, offered extensions to defenseman Ian Mitchell and Nicholas Bowden. Have a few other players, Kurashev, Athanasiou, Domi, that we're going to consider offering extensions to as the season moves on, but want to kind of see how this new team works together and meshes before we start making any big decisions. And we did get Mitchell and Bowden signed to those contracts, and we did put Toews onto the trade block. Don't know whether we'll get some offers for him in the coming weeks and months, but given that it's very conceivable that we'll be moving on from him, at least want the other teams thinking about whether they can potentially bring him on board. I would not think that there would be many teams with the ability to take on that contract, but if someone's got an offer, we hope that they show us what it is. Well, the good news is we just beat Detroit 7-4 to get to 500 at 2-2, 4 points on the season. The bad news is that Nicholas Bowden, one of the better young players we have on our team, is going to be out 3 months with a torn labrum. Just signed him to an extension, so not optimal timing by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll have him back before the end of the season. You can see 2-2 start, 4 points. We're already 6 points behind the Predators, but if we keep playing this way, we certainly won't end up in last place, which is the only big goal we have this season. And the good news is that Alec Regula, who began the season on the injured list, another young defenseman, is at the point where he's now day-to-day. So hopefully we will have him back relatively soon. I guess this is part of the situation of having older future Hall of Famers on our team, but Patrick Kane has missed the last couple of games with a hip strain. Looks like he's able to play now, but Taves, his knee soreness, going to be out for a couple of weeks. So that's obviously not optimal, but he's not available. I think we're going to go ahead and just put him on the injured list to be particularly careful. We'll reactivate Kane, getting close to the point where Regula is going to be back. He's day-to-day at this point, which is positive. But we'll go down to AAA, or we're not playing baseball anymore. It's the AHL. It's not AAA. And see who we can bring up to potentially help our front line a bit. Well, another day, another loss, another injury. Taylor Radish going to be out 3 months with a ruptured Achilles tendon. So the injuries are hitting the Blackhawks early and often, unfortunately, this season. As I talked about earlier, though, we're not expected to be a contender this year, so it's going to give us an opportunity to know some of our younger players even better than we already do and figure out, hopefully, who's going to be a part of this team in the future and who we want to be moving on from after this season. Well, the month of October is in the books. 3-5-1 record for the Blackhawks with 7 points. So certainly not an optimal result. We've lost 4 of our last 5 at this point. The one win was 6-0 over the Oilers at home, so that was a nice victory. But as the calendar turns to November, we're 3-5-1, 7 points. We are avoiding last place as we're 3 points free of the Coyotes, who do have a game in hand on us, but didn't have high expectations for this season, and thus far we're living up to them. Oh, we got a good result. Rocky Wirtz satisfied with our performance, understands that we're going to be rebuilding. Fans are satisfied with us, and we did just get a win against the Islanders to start off the month. Taking a look at our job security, kind of a win one, lose one kind of situation, but the goal is to finish not last. Do have some issues with team harmony at this point. Got a lot of unpopular players and a few disruptive and outspoken players also. Hopefully the leadership, Kane, Taves, Johnson, and McCabe, can kind of get some of these guys under control, because I don't want the locker room to become a major issue. Haven't had any clicks for him yet. That's one of the new features in this game. Hopefully we can avoid that feature for the time being. And the Blackhawks have been playing a little better here in early November, and we have Taves healthy again. Won that game against the Islanders that I mentioned, then we won against the Kings. Getting ready to go on the road against Winnipeg tonight, but we will at least have our captain back for that performance. And we did get the W against Winnipeg for our 3rd win in a row. We somehow have a winning record, which is pretty shocking. Cody Glass was just waived by Nashville. I think he might be a player who can help us a little bit. He's 23 years old. Decent physical skills, really good personality in the clubhouse, it seems. I just think that when I look at our roster right now, we've got a guy like Luke Phillip on the roster who's 4 years older, not quite as dominant physically, maybe a little better offensively, but certainly not a guy that I think we're going to be building around for the long term. So I think he'd be a player that we'd consider waiving and sending back down to the AHL if the claim does go through. You know, another guy that we could potentially move on from at some point is Mackenzie Entwistle, who does have the fact that he is younger going for him, but don't know if he's a long-term part of our team or not. And after playing pretty well, the Blackhawks have now lost 2 in a row to the Kings and the Ducks. And another player banged up. We had to put Sam Lafferty on the injured list with a strained pec. See, the record is 6-7-1 now. The move of Lafferty to the injured list is going to allow us to, I thought, bring back Luke Phillip, but we actually have 23-year-old Cole Gutman, who's got 5 goals and 3 assists in his first 9 games down in the AHL. So we're going to let him make his NHL debut. Hopefully tomorrow night against Carolina, bring him up, see if he can maybe provide us with a little bit of offense. Things are not going well for the Blackhawks. Defenseman Connor Murphy suspended for 5 games after an incident in a 3-0 loss to St. Louis. So midway through the month of November, we're still ahead of the Coyotes, but may not be as easy to stay out of last place as I was hoping when the season began. Record is 6-9-1 at this point. Hasn't been great, hasn't been horrible, but at this point with 4 losses in a row, after that 3-0 start to the month, we've now lost 4 in a row. Would definitely be nice to get a W our next game out, which isn't till the weekend, and it's up in Boston against the Bruins, back-to-back games at Boston, and then home against Pittsburgh this Saturday and Sunday. And another interesting player on waivers, Oskar Sundqvist from the Red Wings. Looks like he could definitely be a pretty decent defensive forward for us. He's in the last year of his contract. He is making $3 million, but we've got the capacity to take him on. So I think we're going to go ahead and put in a claim on him. Not a player that's going to be with us for the long term, but do want to make sure that we avoid finishing in last, since it would seem like that's not that exotic of a goal, and I want to make sure that we keep ownership happy in our first year on this job. We want to be bad. We want to try to get a decent draft pick, but we don't want to be so bad that our job is in jeopardy. And our claim for Sundqvist did go through, so I think that's positive news. What we are going to do is send the youngster Gutman back down. Did not do much in the 2 games that he was with us, only on the ice for $741 a game, -1. Pretty low game scores for him. Let him get a little more seasoning down in Rockford. So we are going to send him down there. And I'm going to put Sundqvist right into the lineup, his first game with us. See if hopefully he can help stem the slump that we're in right now, or that we're on right now, with all those losses in a row. 4 losses in a row. Hopefully we can break the streak either tonight at Boston or tomorrow at home against the Pens. And we did break the streak, got a 2-1 win over the Bruins. Tyler Johnson, second-degree MCL sprain, out for 2 to 3 weeks. There is the new feature in the game this year where we can delay treatment, given that we're not really playing for much this year. I don't see any reason for us to delay treatment and potentially have him get hurt more seriously. So we will go ahead and put him on the injured list. Kevin Korchinski for us, one of the top young prospects we have, first round pick from I believe just a few months ago. 2 goals and 14 assists in 17 games in the WHL so far this season. So hopefully we can string a second win in a row together. We are going to put Johnson onto the injury list, see who we're going to call back up. Honestly, very well could be Mr. Gutman. As you look at what we have, we just don't have a very deep organization right now. Normally, I like to build a team that down in the AHL, we've got a lot of these kind of 2.5 star players that we can bring up and down and not necessarily feel horrible about losing if they don't go through waivers. And you can see that with the Blackhawks right now, we just don't have a lot of players like that, and we have a decent number of injuries at this point. So we're going to bring Cole Gutman right back up to the Blackhawks, even after we thought he wasn't quite ready. And after playing last night, we've got a few people that are a little worn out. Let's see what we're going to do with the lineup. Gutman actually is not doesn't seem like he's quite ready to go after all the travel back and forth when he got sent down. So we will let him sit and watch tonight. Domi at 82% is obviously still one of the more talented players on our team. We do have to figure out whether we want to offer an extension to him. He hasn't been impressive thus far this year, just 6 points through 16 games, -9 plus-minus. Coming off the back-to-backs, we'll give him the day off. Let Entwistle play, trying to go with a somewhat fresher lineup with our forwards, still dealing with the suspension of Connor Murphy, so we're kind of stuck and rolling with the guys we have as far as our defensemen. But see if we can get a second win in a row today against the Pens. Drew a goalie on waivers. 32 years old, though, Pavel Francouz. He would probably still be an upgrade for us. Not making crazy amounts of money. Guess the question is, how does he compare with Mrazek at this point? They're pretty similar players. I don't see him being a huge upgrade from Mrazek. And Mrazek is almost 2 years younger. I don't really think there's any reason to bring him on board. So we will let him pass by, see if we can get a W against Pittsburgh here with our revamped lineup as we close in on Thanksgiving week. And we did get back-to-back victories against the Bruins and the Pens. So playing a little better, record up to 8-9-1. Hopefully we can get a couple more W's before the end of the month of November. And we did get a third straight win against Dallas, 4-2, so that's positive. Patrick Kane, groin soreness, going to be out for about 5 days, not optimal. Alex Formenton, a strained hammy, out 2 to 3 weeks. Again, I just don't see any reason to push these guys, given that we are not really a true contender this season. Injury list is going to start getting a little bit big, especially when we put Formenton on it. So that's clearly not optimal. Lafferty is day-to-day at this point, so we certainly won't have him back for Montreal tomorrow. Going to have to go back down to the AHL, or at this point maybe the ECHL, to find a player who can help us. But really just looking for a body at this point to put on the roster. Got Josiah Slavin in Rockford. We will bring him up to Chicago. That gives us a full roster. I don't know that we're going to play Slavin here, but we'll figure that all out. So as November comes to an end, ownership's still pretty pleased with the way that we're performing. Ended up being a pretty good month after that difficult stretch in the early to mid stages. We ended up stringing 5 wins in a row together until we kind of lost in overtime in our last game of the month to the Oilers. Still have an 11-9-2 record, 22 games into the season. Arizona is really struggling. Would hope that we can stay above them to at least avoid last place. I mean, we are only 3 points-ish out of actually we're closer than that. Or I guess I could look at the wild card to figure that out rather than making the assumptions myself. Yeah, we're actually only 1 point away from the wild card at this point. So I don't know that we need to take on a bunch of salaries and take on a bunch of veterans to try to make the playoffs. But clearly it would be a nice surprise if that did happen. And through the first 22 games of the season, no surprise that our top scorers are Kane and Taves. And Seth Jones, the highly regarded defenseman, is actually tied with them in points. They all have 14 points, but Kane is our leading goal scorer. Jones and Mike Hardman each have 10 assists to kind of lead the way in assists. You can see plus minus Taves and Regula, interesting, are +5. Got a fair number of players with pretty negative numbers. Can't say it's a total shock, but all in all, it hasn't been a horrible start to the season for the Blackhawks. I know that it's not all that exciting to say, hey, we're not horrible, hooray. But we are finding out more about the team, getting an idea about who we would like to have back next year, who we perhaps would want to move on from through their performance. You know, one guy that we've been thinking a lot about is Athanasiou, 28 years old. Looks, in terms of his physical ratings and some of his offensive ratings, that he could be a fairly dynamic offensive player. And when you look back at his career stats, he's definitely had some years when you look back in his mid-20s with the Red Wings when he was a pretty significant offensive player, but hasn't performed that way in the last few years. And $3.7 million, it's not egregious what he's looking for, but we'll kind of keep thinking about whether or not that's the right decision to bring him back. And those are the type of things that we're going to be focused on over the next couple months of the season as we continue to move along and get to know these Blackhawks better, and also approach the trade deadline eventually. So we'll be thinking about those type of decisions in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.